Good morning, afternoon.
Okay, directors, good afternoon. Strathcona Regional District Board meeting for Wednesday, June the 29th. Just to inform the directors online or virtually, we have directors Baker, Moglove, and alternate director Sarah Fowler in the boardroom today. We have confirmation of quorum. I'd like to acknowledge we are on the Lakwatuck speaking people territory. I'll call the meeting to order and the adoption of the public agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd move adoption with one added item under new business from Area D regarding the Area D APC, please.
Okay, thank you. Under new business.
Second.
Thank you. Director Abram? You're muted, Jim. Jim, you're muted. No, still muted.
Sorry,
There you go.
it somehow covered itself up and I couldn't get at it.
Okay.
I just like to make a quick comment at this point, and it'll only take a sec. As many of you may know, I am in radiation treatments in Victoria for a month. Started a couple weeks ago, and I've got until July 15. Things are going very well, I think, and I'm about halfway there. But I just wanted to say publicly that we, as local people, are so fortunate in this province to have such a wonderful healthcare system to care for us, and the professionals that staff it. They are absolutely wonderful. We should, as local government, in my opinion, do everything we can to keep it vibrant and fight when necessary to keep it alive and well. And I thank you for allowing me to take that moment.
Thank you, Director Abram. I'm happy to hear things are going well for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the agenda as amended, anyone opposed? Seen and carried. No petition delegations, adoption of the minutes for the June 15th meeting.
Move adoption.
Wally? Second. Baker, second, thank you. Any errors or omissions? Director Lee?
Oh, I was just lowering my hand, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Director Lee?
No, I thought I reduced my lowered hand, but
There you go.
won't
Soft.
lower.
Yep, soft down.
Good.
Okay, no business rising, no public consideration, no notice of motion. Chair's report, I think the only thing I have verbally to throw today is yesterday I attended, and so did Renee from the office here, the Greek Seafood RAS grand opening of the hatchery in Gold River. About 80 people were there in attendance. Unfortunately, our MLA, Michelle Babchuk, got delayed in airports trying to get there. I guess she was in the airport, but there's no ground crew to help her get on the plane, apparently. Anyways, it was a great day. It's great for Gold River. It's a $25 million expansion. It's great to see. I know Gold River Days in August 27th. They're going to try and do some tours of the hatchery and also the big ship. They're going to pull it into dock and you can do tours on that. So anyways, that's it for my verbal report. Motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Judy and Director Fowler. Call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. Committee reports. Electoral Area Service Committee for June 15th. Motion to receive the minutes.
So moved, Abram.
Abram, second by
Wally.
Director Wally. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. Staff reports. First staff report, the ESA Development Permit Application DP3D22. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
So moved.
So moved. Sorry, it's in Area D. Moved.
Moved and second by Director
Wally.
Fowler. Thank you. And I'll go CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay, on receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item B.
I would move B and one comment with it, please.
Okay, move it and seconder. Hang on, let's get a seconder first.
Second, Abram.
Okay, and Director Lee.
Thank you. I went out one very rainy Saturday with the chair of my advisory commission to have a look at the wetlands and the stream nearby. And it was comforting to know that the house sites are high and dry near to the road because it's very wet property. I feel that I'm comfortable moving the recommendation.
Great, thank you, Director Lee. Any further discussion? I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item 2, develop variance permit, DV2D22. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt, another Area D one.
Director Lee,
Second.
Wally, and the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
On receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. And item B, development permit, variance permit DV2D22 as attached to staff report, June 11th, be
Move.
approved.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Lee,
Second, Abram.
Abram seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. Item 3, OCP consultation process. Curry, motion to receive the report.
The report.
Abram,
Second.
Wally, and the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Go. On receipt, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item B.
Move item B, Abram.
Abram
Second.
and Wally, thank you. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item 4, electoral area housing needs report. Motion to receive the report.
Move receipt.
Wally,
Second,
Abram, and I'll go CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had this housing needs report on the electoral areas a couple weeks ago and showed it to all the EA directors, and it was really what I thought a really interesting report, well presented, that I took the liberty of putting it on the board agenda in that other directors would like to see the results and listen to the presentation, as it's going to relate to some of the municipalities as well when you look at some of the housing numbers and the affordability. So I believe we have a presentation, and happy to entertain any questions after you've watched the presentation.
Thank you. So on receipt of the report, call
so
question.
moved. Oh, it's already
It's
moved.
already been moved and seconded. Just question. Anyone opposed? Seen and carried. And Sandy McKay from Electoral Development Services will give a presentation now on the electoral area housing needs study. Good afternoon, Sandy, and welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chair. Hello, directors. My name is Sandy Mackey. I'm the Housing Research and Policy Lead at Electoral Development Services. We're the consulting firm that's been asked to do the Electoral Area Housing Needs Report, and I'm very happy to be back sharing this presentation more broadly. All of the electoral area directors have already seen it, and it did result in some great conversation, so excited to answer any questions you might have about the presentation again. So I don't know if I should share my screen or if we've got it, but I've got mine up, so I'll just share it. There we go. And if I could just get a thumbs up, make sure everyone can see that. Great. Okay, let's get started. We'll jump right into it. So first and foremost, I'll chat a little bit about our process, then I'll go into some of the limitations of rural data, and then we'll talk about the findings. So we started in the winter, earlier this year in winter, and through spring of 2022, we did some significant community engagement, including a series of key informant interviews, as well as a remarkably well-received community survey. We received about 450 total responses, 437 for different households across the Strathcona Regional District. We also gathered data from a variety of different sources, those that are legislatively mandated, like the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation and BC Statistics, but also some custom data sets that we were able to procure, including some custom data on Indigenous housing and some data on short-term rentals across the SRD, which your staff actually purchased separately, which is, I think, a really valuable purchase when you see some of the data findings that have come up later in this report. But first, before we jump into those findings, I do want to chat with you about some of the limitations that we have. First and foremost, we're responding directly to a new provincial requirement, which has specific data collection and reporting requirements. So we have to meet all of those things. Sometimes they're not perfectly relevant for rural areas. As well, not all of the 2021 census data is available yet. The last piece of data will be coming in October and November of this year. So there will be some new pieces that will be probably updated sometime in the next couple of years. As well, electoral areas have a really challenging data environment. They are small geographies with smaller populations, as well as seasonal populations, which are really hard to track using census data, and rapid changes. So, we only have 5-year increments on the census. There are some pieces of data that come every year, but mostly it's a 5-year increment, and that's really bad at tracking big, fast changes, which I think a lot of you have seen across your regional district. But there are ways around those limitations. Quantitative data, so numbers aren't everything. We received a tremendous engagement response. By combining some of those datas, some of those data geographies, we were able to actually stabilize some indicators and provide more relevant trends. And everything we do is passed through kind of 3 filters: the data, the engagement, and the professional experience on our team, as well as in your staff. So even if every indicator isn't perfect, they all tend to point in the same direction. So your report is actually not just one report, it's 5 reports. There's a regional summary as well as 4 individual electoral area reports. The regional summary has the full executive summary for the entire report. So if you're just looking for a small place to start, I would recommend starting with the regional and reading the first kind of 10 to 15 pages. That's where most of the data is incorporated. But if you want more specifics on your specific electoral area, definitely your individual report will be more valuable to you. So let's jump into it, starting with population. Across the rural areas of the SRD, we're expecting the population to grow from about 8,500 in 2011 to a projected 10,300 in 2031. Electoral area D is the largest electoral area. It's also the fastest growing. We expect an 18% population growth, and A, B, and C are growing modestly 9% to 8% across each of those areas. The big change is going to be the proportion of seniors in those communities. We're expecting seniors to grow from 18% of the population in 2011 to as high as 35% of the population in 2031. That is not abnormal in rural communities across the province. We're seeing seniors accounting for up to 40% of populations already, with those numbers expected to increase. So housing and supports for seniors was understandably one of the most prominent concerns that came up in community engagement, and that has, I think, clearly been shown to be relevant given where we're expecting your population to go over the next 10 years. Many of those older residents were worried about their ability to age in place specifically, and some of them were currently supporting family or if they weren't directly supporting their family, were nervous that their children would not be able to find a permanent home in their rural area. So for us, that highlights a need for affordable and accessible housing, particularly rental options, which are appropriate for seniors on fixed incomes, home care and semi-supported or fully supported housing options, as well as housing that's closer to amenities and services. Some of the ways you can move forward with solutions in the SRD are looking at modest multi-unit housing where you can, as well as regional land use decisions. Regional growth strategy or other regional land use options are really appropriate, especially when looking at how to integrate home care, semi-supported, and transportation options into seniors housing. The other key demographic that we looked at was renters. Rental housing across the rural areas is hard to find, it's more expensive, and it's more likely to be in poor condition. And renters are just less likely to be able to meet their needs than housing owners. A big reason for that is the increased cost of renting compared to incomes. Across your rural areas, renters earn a median household income of about $39,000 per year, whereas owners earn close to $65,000 per year. Neither of those incomes are growing at the same pace as the cost of housing, but renters are on a much thinner edge than owners are generally. As well, limited availability makes the rental units that are available very expensive and really competitive. So about 18% of households across your region, rural areas rent. 45% of all renter respondents to our survey indicated their current housing costs were unaffordable, and 40% indicated that they are, and 40% according to the census, are in core housing need, which means they're either in an unaffordable home, a home that is too small for their family, or a home that's in need of major repair. And there are lots of quotes throughout this presentation. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will just say that, just this first quote here, can't find a one bedroom for under $1,400 a month. That's double what it was 10 years ago. And that's the kind of sentiment that we heard throughout the engagement process. Renters are really feeling squeezed, and even when they can find a place, or even if they could afford a place, they're typically unable to find one. So for us, again, highlighting a need for more dedicated, affordable, and appropriate rental options, similar to some of those findings that would make housing more appropriate for seniors. Housing for workers in key industries, especially in areas B and C, where there's a large seasonal population. And housing for families and individuals. It wasn't just seasonal workers or single folks. It was often families who are hoping to stay and live in the rural areas permanently, but are unable to find appropriate accommodations. Some of the things you can do, again, encouraging those denser multifamily options where appropriate. That's difficult to do in a rural area, but with regional land use decisions, you can start addressing some of those needs collectively rather than as individual communities. Looking at different tools like rental zoning or rental pre-zoning, which are relatively new tools available to municipalities and local governments through the Local Government Act. You can consider things like inclusionary zoning and density bonusing schemes, but again, those are typically more appropriate for municipalities. And as well, other incentives to encourage affordable units. And then a big piece that emerged this was continuing to monitor and potentially regulate short-term rentals. Short-term rentals like Airbnb or Verbos, the number of unique properties grew from 153 when we first started collecting data to 625 unique properties. 70% of those homes were located in electoral areas, and the vast majority are classified as an entire home or apartment, which means that typically it's not being shared with someone. It's not a room in a house, it's its own separate unit. Many residents that we spoke to were concerned that STRs were directly affecting rental availability in their communities. So that will be something to monitor moving forward, and we'll work with your staff to ensure that they have the data that they need to continue to track those units. So the next thing I'll touch on is ownership. It's not just rentals and it's not just seniors, it's also owners who are struggling. Cost that the median income in each electoral area could afford reasonably, given some basic mortgage assumptions, against the cost of the median home over the past 10 years. Both of these have been adjusted for inflation. So the green line is what the median income can afford, and that sort of lighter line is the cost of the median home. And in electoral area A, it's actually still relatively affordable. It's the most affordable of the 4 electoral areas. And you can see that largely the median income could afford the median home. They're relatively similar until sort of 2017, where the lines have split slightly. The cost of the median home now about $400,000. The mortgage affordable to a first-time home buyer making the median income about $313,000. But those are generally pretty close. It looks a little more dramatic in electoral area B, where the lines have never really met, certainly not over the past 10 years, and now they're further apart than ever. The median home sold for almost $800,000 in electoral area B in 2020, whereas the first-time home buyer earning the median income could probably only afford about $200,000 on a mortgage, which is really a huge gap, and a gap that we don't expect to decrease. Looks very similar in electoral area C, slightly less expensive, but still a very large gap over the past 10 years. And one thing that I think is really instructive is looking at area D, where the lines were almost perfectly together for the period up until 2016 when they began to split. In 2016 across the province is when we've seen a lot of these affordability concerns starting to manifest with greater and greater magnitude. As you can see, they've sort of slowly drifted apart. Incomes are just not keeping up with the cost of housing. It's that way for renters, it's that way for first-time home buyers, and it's going to continue to be that way unless there are some dramatic interventions both at a local, federal, and provincial level. So yeah, it's both owners and renters. Owners, maintenance, cost, utilities, ability to age in place. Many worry they have to leave their community as they get older. For renters, cost, availability, and it makes it tougher to save, to pay that down payment on an ownership unit. More people renting more expensive units for longer into their lifetimes. And both of those things are being impacted by the cost of construction. Many of the homes in your communities are reaching the end of their lifespan, and the single detached stock is not as able as newer units to evolve to support an aging population. Construction costs, utility fees, land upgrades, procurement, all very challenging in electoral areas, especially in electoral areas B and C. And even with local support, that servicing is a really key limiter of new housing options. So even when density is supported broadly across communities, there are often other hurdles to jump over in terms of, water, sewer, those sorts of pieces. So again, there's not a lot of great solutions to these things, certainly nothing that you can really take on as a local government, but collectively, working with federal and provincial entities, advocating for more non-market housing will be key to reducing the gap between what people can afford and what is available in your markets. Non-market housing tends to be dedicated, affordable, and appropriate. It usually takes on the form of something called secured affordable housing, which is secured at an affordable rate in perpetuity, typically funded by senior government and operated by a nonprofit. There's not a ton you can do to support those uses at a local level, but what you can do is make it easier to develop them when the opportunities do come. You can do that by educating your community to reduce stigma around those uses. That is a huge piece that makes it very difficult when someone does receive funding to actually implement those types of units. Land acquisition and disposal strategy. If there is land, making it available for affordable housing is critical. Prioritizing nonprofit development applications when they do come in, exploring more regional partnerships with both electoral areas, municipalities, and First Nations governments. And you can look at things like more formal collaborations, potentially including a regional housing service bylaw, which actually allows the direct funding of affordable housing across the SRD. And there's some great examples from your neighbors on the island. Both the Comox Valley and the Cowichan Valley have regional housing service bylaws on the books. So that's it. I'll leave it there. This is a really just skimming the surface of all the information in the report. And I would just like to thank all of the partners that we worked with throughout this project, and especially thank you to the elected officials who all were able to participate in our study, and the SRD staff, especially Meredith and Elaine, who did an incredible job driving those survey responses and really have done a great job scaling this project from the start to the finish.
Excellent.
So
Thank
that's
you very
it.
much, Sandy.
problem.
We have some questions. Director Abram.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Sandy, for your presentation a second time. I enjoyed it both times. And you did a wonderful job, I think, of presenting everything that we needed to hear, except for one thing. And that came, I've always been a supporter of reducing the number of Airbnbs and increasing the number of standalone rental housing to take care of all of these issues you're talking about. Workers coming from off island, small families, aging in place, et cetera, et cetera. However, I got a number of calls after I presented in my local paper our last conversation. I presented the results of that meeting and that presentation. And the calls that came in were from people that tried to do the right thing and rent out second houses, second cabins, on their properties. And what they alerted me to was that I was missing one thing, and that was that not all renters are ideal citizens, and that they are under the protection of, I'm not even sure what the agency's called, but it's like a rentalsman kind of thing, right? Where they have a lot of rights more than the people that own the house. They can't raise the rents, they can't evict people for certain reasons, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, it's another piece that I think maybe needs to be looked at here, that rental housing is being discouraged at the level where people are most willing to do it. They're actually willing to set aside rental housing on their property, but yet they see these other models where it didn't work, and they're withdrawing their support for it. So, how do we as electoral area directors deal with that to try and make it more of a cooperative effort between these provincial agencies? And I've talked to you, I believe personally, about the other provincial agencies like VHA and BC Housing and all those that completely stifle densification in the areas that we've already designated it for. It's not local government, but local government gets blamed. It's the actual intercooperation between provincial, local. So I'll leave it at that and let others talk.
Great. Thank you, Director Abram. Any other discussion, Director Mogul?
Thank you very much. I was sort of thought maybe some of the other electoral area directors might want to speak. I just wanted to talk a little bit at the high level on this issue, because this housing issue and the relationship between housing needs reports and our policy procedures regarding land planning is top of mind for UBCM, on which executive I sit, and also at the provincial government level. You've all, I'm sure, seen in the newspaper Minister Eby's comments about taking away zoning powers from municipalities. The discussion I've had personally with some of the ministers is more to do with how do municipalities and or electoral area directors, how do you connect the housing needs reports to the housing that we actually need in our communities? So I'll just give you an example. I'll be brief. In Campbell River, we had a report from our planning department about a month ago indicating that based on our housing needs reports, we're building way more housing than theoretically we need. It's because we're not building the right kind of housing. And so the housing needs report identifies the kind of housing that is required or needed in the community based on the demographics, based on the research. So the question is, how do you get developers to develop or build the kind of housing we need? So that's the discussion that's happening at the provincial level. And so I appreciate there's lots of complexities to it, but I would say this is probably one of the top three, well, not probably, it is one of the top three priorities going forward at the UBCM level and our discussions with the province. I just want to highlight that. And one more thing. So when we first got our housing needs report at the city, I'll be perfectly honest, we received it, and unfortunately it was based on sort of outdated information. The census was from 2016, and I think I don't want to speak for all of council, but we looked at it and said, okay. I don't think we've really given it the significance or the due, not respect, I don't know, that's not the right word. I think as we move forward and we see the housing problems in our communities, we're seeing the connection more and more between the housing needs report and the kind of housing we're building. So I just put that out there. This is a hugely important piece moving forward for all of our communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Mogul. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, again, thank you, Sandy. I too have seen it twice now. Enjoyed it both times. Saying that, then we'll call question on receipt of the, so we have a motion on the floor. We don't have a motion on the floor to receive. Motion to receive the report.
Abram,
Director Abram.
moved.
Seconder.
Lee.
Director Lee. Thank you. Any discussion? Call question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you again, Sandy. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, everyone.
Item 5, we'll wait for the agenda to come back up. Okay, item 5, Cortez Island Refuse Collection Service. Motion to receive the report from the CEO,
Move receipt.
Baker and Wally, and the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to add.
Kill. On receipt for the report, anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item B, the bylaw to amend the Cortez Island solid waste rates and regulation bylaw be prepared for further consideration.
So moved.
Director Lee,
Second.
Director Wally. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. And item C, the amendments to the contract of the VEM contracting for curbside waste collection on Cortez Island be prepared for the board's consideration based on the current service level.
So move.
Wally, seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Director Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item 6, Quathach Cove Sewage System Operator Agreement. Motion to see the report.
So moved.
Abram. Seconder.
Second.
Wally. On receipt, Director Abram, or on B?
No, on B, sorry.
Okay, thank you. On receipt then, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. And item B, Chair and Corporate Officer be authorized to execute the proposed contract with.
So moved.
Thank you, Director
Second.
Abram. Wally. And Director Abram, you have a question?
Yeah, not a question. I just want to say that I'm very pleased to see that the SRD is hiring a local Quadra Islander to continue doing the job that he's been doing as an essential job for our sewer system, which all of you have heard far too much about Q Cove Sewer over the years. And congrats to Russell for doing a good job, and he certainly deserves the modest increase that he's asked for, and we are proposing to give him. So hopefully he will continue on with this service. It's only going to get bigger. So here we go.
Thank you, Director Abram. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item 7, Arbutus Road Pathway Proposal. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
So moved.
Baker and Abram, and the CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
On receipt, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. And item B, the regional district proceed with a permit application to construct and maintain a proposed Arbutus Road public pathway on Quadra Island.
I would move this proposal, but I do have some
Okay,
questions.
Director Abram and the seconder,
Second.
Director Wally, and Director Abram, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of this pathway being built. And I commend the volunteers that have been pursuing it for some time and putting a lot of effort into it. The only thing that I'm a bit confused about, and I'm not quite getting it from the staff report, we have had many road right-of-way applications to the Ministry of Highways to have a permit or a special use permit or right of way or whatever they call it, on whatever day, for exactly this purpose, to get from point A to point B. And we have just put those through as permits, right? And the ministry charges us a very minimum amount, and it becomes our right, legal right, to use that portion of their land to access A to B. In this proposal, it sounds like the way it's written anyway, and maybe I'm just misreading it, it's not quite that simple, and that all the building of it and everything else, that would certainly be up to us, or the community, I should say. And just like with any other beach access or anything else. So it seems like in the staff report, like we are taking this over, taking a highway over and adding it to the SRD land base, and then we're going to be responsible for it forever. I don't see it that way. I see it as us using highways lands for a specific purpose, movement of people and goods to and from A to B, and it's being done in a voluntary manner with voluntary supplies, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess, you know, if there is some need for regional district taxation money at some point to do an upgrade or fix something or whatever, that would come forward to us and we would put it forward and approve it most likely. But anyway, just it seems more complex than it really is. And, you know, I certainly support it. Like I said, I want to see it move forward. It's a connection that has long been ignored. Will cut a great deal of distance off for walkers, bicyclers, whatever else people ride on these days. And so I do support it. But if I could get some sort of clarity on that from staff, I'd appreciate it.
I will do that. I'll go to staff. Aniko.
Thank you through the chair to the director. You're absolutely right, Director Abram. This is a typical license between the SRD and the ministry to construct and maintain a path. Nothing more than that. The operational costs will come out of our normal operating budget for Electoral Area C, and a good portion of the construction being handled by in-kind works from the volunteers of ICANN. Thank you.
Okay, so it confused me, but at the same time, you've answered it very clearly, and it's exactly what I thought it was, and what I can totally support. And my hat's off to the volunteers from ICANN and otherwise. So I think I've already moved it. Did I?
Yep, it's already moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded, so
Great.
there we go.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 8, Quadra Island Bike Park Proposal. Motion to receive the report from the CAO.
Receive.
Abram?
Second.
And Lee, and I'll go to CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this has been through EASC with a recommendation. However, I've just added a few options should the board choose the need to advance one of those. A small editorial on my part. This is now the second time during this term we've had a group apply for a grant on SRD property without consultation. There's a few things that it brings into question here is, for instance, this one is a bike park. The SRD has strategic initiatives. We forward board motions on applications to be supported, and we often, if not always, have recreation. So the question is, when these groups are applying for grant applications, saying there's a consultation process with the SRD, that there's been none, nor do we support it, and then they get awarded the grant. You know, are we working against each other? So I think that's something that we need to discuss, because they are going to receive a recreation grant. No, it's not from the same fund that we applied to, but it's a recreation grant award that we need to consider how the province is going to view giving awards to Campbell River. There is obviously recognition by the province there is a connection to the SRD as they know it's on SRD property. There's a few other things that, you know, we're really not with full understanding or agreement with the Quadra Island Rec Society. There's terms of the agreement about procurement, consultation, increased cost, liability, operations cost, that I'm just going to say there isn't concurrence between the regional district staff and the Quadra Island Rec Society. So you have a resolution in front of you. I just wanted to bring those points up for discussion if there is any, and there's options that follow, but there is a motion that was supported by EASC.
Thank you, CEO. Any questions, Director Abram?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll just save my comments for the next motion.
Joe? Any further discussion? On receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. And Director Abram?
I would move that we proceed with the bike park, or however it needs to be worded, but that we proceed with the construction of the bike park using the grant money that has already been allocated by the province.
Okay, there's three options, Director Abram, A, B, or C.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't up on the board before when I was looking at my other notes. Okay, so these are the options that are in the staff report. I don't understand the last line in option A where it says, without further involvement by the regional district. I'm not sure what that means, because there certainly needs to be further involvement at a later date. But before I make a motion on that, I'd just like to mention that our CAO and I have had a long discussion that has resulted in the agreement that he and I are going to meet after I'm finished with my treatments down here in Victoria. So after July 15th, we are going to meet with the Quadra Island Recreation Society Board to sort out all of those issues that Dave just brought up. They're very pertinent, every one of them. And I think that they absolutely need to be discussed by both parties, and there needs to be a very clear understanding on who does what. And that at this point seems to be missing. So, but I do not, I want to support this bike park. I supported the very first one. I helped build it, and it was rudimentary, and it's been outgrown, and it's been disappearing. But this one is going to be professionally done, and they did, outside of the rules, possibly, according to staff, they did get a grant, and they do plan to do this right. So I think that since they are planning to do it right, I think that the regional district can support them. And in the future, any funds that might be needed, which I don't think will be much, but that would come through the normal budgeting process at the end of the year, because the Quadra Island Rec Society, through the Blanken Park, what's it called, the Hall subsidy or whatever, they put forward a very detailed line-by-line item budgeted that comes forward to the board. Everybody gets to review it, including myself, and we say yay or nay. So I don't think this can get out of hand. I think it will be totally in the control of the regional district as far as funding goes. As far as the licensing, or the insurance issue, I believe the bike park, quote unquote, is already a listed item from the last time we did the bike park. So that sort of, I guess, gave them the idea that since it was covered then, it's covered now. Well, things may have changed, I don't know. And I'm not going to, presuppose that they haven't. But if they have, then we'll work on that. But if they haven't, then it sounds like there's agreement that we should be able to house it under the Quadra Island, the Blanken Park Society, and move forward with it. So I would suggest that option A works if we just
Director Abram, sorry to cut you off, Jim, but is there not a recommendation from EASC that the board conditionally approve in principle the bike park project?
Exactly, but that was conditional. So now we're at the point now where we're saying, okay, they've had further discussions with staff and the director, and I am willing to support this totally, But I would like the meeting with Dave and I to take place with the Rec Society, and that involves more regional district involvement. So that's why option A just is, it's a little bit hard for me to say without further involvement. I think we do need some involvement. And if it said with further involvement by the regional district, I think that would be more to the point. So could I amend option A, make an amendment that just says
Okay,
option A as,
Sorry, Jim,
pardon me?
but
Go ahead.
did a motion not come from EASC that the committee recommend the board support the QIRS to proceed with the reconstruction of the existing bike park using the grant funds they will be received? That came from EASC, correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
And are you asking me if I'm moving that motion
correct.
or?
Yes.
Okay, well, I think, did we, in his wisdom, did we not approve that at EASC and at board, or did it just get referred to board?
We're at board now. It's only been approved by EASC.
Okay, so then I guess the first motion would have to be that one. Is that correct, Tom?
Whatever you, go ahead, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, the report simply documents what has happened at EASC since the board last looked at this, together with some options for the board to consider. So it's really up to the board which direction they wish to go on this.
Okay, well then I guess, you know, the second motion that's listed there in a different color, that the committee recommend that the board support the QIRS to proceed with the reconstruction of the existing bike park using the grant funds that they received. I guess that needs to be my motion.
Okay, that's moved. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Director Lee, thank you. And I have a question, Director Moglove.
Not a question, I just have a couple comments to make. Appreciate not wanting to get involved in Quad Island politics, and I do support bike parks in general, and this one in particular probably. I just wanted to make a couple comments about how things can in fact get out of hand when you least expect them to. Having served on City Council for a number of years, I can think of 3 projects that were put forward by various nonprofit groups for athletic type projects that did in fact get out of hand, and the city had to come forward with significant funding to get the projects to final completion. So even with the best of intentions, things can in fact get out of hand. Having said that, if it did get out of hand, I recognize that this board, it will fall on the electoral area director, not on the whole board in terms of any financial help. But I just want to point that out. With best intentions, sometimes these projects can go sideways.
Thank you. And I have Director Adams.
You're muted, Andy.
You get me now?
Yeah, barely, yeah.
You got me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Certainly appreciate the comments from Director Mogul. We have gone through a series of different recreational projects with the best of intentions and well-intended and well-meaning groups that do some great things, which is why the reason I would really be supporting option B that provides that protection for the SRD, while we can continue to move ahead and support what is a great project. I would have great difficulty supporting A without having some caveats in there that are referenced in option B.
Okay. Any other first-time speakers? If not, I'll go back to Director Abram.
Okay, so I guess I totally appreciate the comments of Director Andrews, or Director Adams, and Director Moglove regarding things getting out of hand and going off the rails. And this society has a really good track record of coming in under budget and on time and getting community
Oh, you're muted, Jim.
No, you mean I have to say all that again? Okay, first of all, I just wanted to thank Director Adams, Director Mogul, first of all, for their comments. I totally agree with them. Things can go off the rails. This rec society has a pretty much flawless track record over all the years that I've been director. And I think that, in this situation, there was a faux pas in the way of not consulting with the regional district, but going directly to the province. And that could have happened just because of the fact that there was a major changeover in the board of directors. But in the end, it did, of course, come directly to staff. So at this point, I think that A would work if it was changed, like I said, with further involvement by the regional district. That takes care of all of those,
Okay.
amending the existing lease, agreement to protect the regional district, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things would be part of that further involvement.
Okay, you've already got a motion on the floor, though.
The motion on the floor is the original one, right?
That's right.
And we proceed with reconstruction.
Correct.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay.
I just like clarity on what exactly is the motion on the floor. Is it
The motion on the floor is that.
nothing else?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that it's the motion shown above option A without the committee in it. So in other words, that the board support, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a recommendation from the EASC forwarded to the board. So the EASC has recommended that the board support this project proceeding, et cetera, et cetera.
Everybody's clear. Question on the motion. Anyone opposed?
Correct.
Adams, Moglove.
Evans is opposed.
Okay, Kerr's opposed. I think Evans is opposed. Baker's opposed. I'm opposed. So what do we have? 6 and 6, so it's defeated. Correct?
I'll move D.
Second, Evans.
Okay, so with 6 and 6, it was defeated. And Director Adams just moved item B, second by Director Evans. Any discussion on B? Director Adams?
Thank you. And again, I'll just repeat that I think this is a great project. I think the society, as Director Abrams has alluded to, will do a great job. But I think we need to be prudent and have our eyes dotted and T's crossed, and have staff involved to keep this on the rails and see the project to fruition in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adams. And Director Abram? You're muted, Jim.
God, I've just been too good about muting. Okay, so I guess option B fulfills the purpose. The only thing that I would suggest, if others would agree with me and support me, is where it says subject to amending the existing lease. If it was to say subject to, what's the word, looking into, exploring amending the existing lease agreement. So that way it leaves it open. We don't necessarily say we are going to amend it. We say that we are going to look at
Yeah.
amending it. So could I make that amendment as a friendly, or do I have to do it officially?
That changes the motion completely. By exploring it as you're exploring it, this is saying you're gonna do it.
Okay, well, I would make the motion as an amendment then.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Director Wally. Okay, discussion. Director Lee. Director Lee, you're muted. Director Lee, did you want to speak? Okay, Director Abram.
Okay, all I would say is that, you know, I feel that it does not really change the motion. It just clarifies, because of the fact that we are going to have this major meeting between Dave and I and the Quadrille and Rec Society, that it gives the latitude to the regional district to look at the lease objectively and decide whether or not it gets amended.
Okay.
Staff are totally capable of doing that, and I think that that would be a good way of doing it. So it's all I'm asking for is a bit of latitude for staff and the Rec Society and the board as a whole to basically say we're going to look at amending it.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't find my mute button, but I wanted to know, how are we going to amend the lease agreement? Are we going to say where the bike park is, that's now going to be leased to the Quadrille Island Recreation Society for a bike park for 10 years? Or what is that amending lease agreement looking like? What is it? And maybe staff can answer that.
Staff.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, we would look at conditions of the grant and make sure our liability, cost, operations, insurance are covered within that, so that we do not incur liability, cost, or risk associated with that. So again, we'd explore the grant and the conditions of the grant and ensure those are covered in the lease agreement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Director Adams.
No, thank you, Director Lee. Covered my point and clarified all the more importance of going with option B unamended.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Director Abram, get your hand up again, but I'm going to call question. I think we've.
Just one real quick one. Dave just used the term that I was basically looking for, explore. So
That's your
he's
amendment.
explore. Pardon me?
That was your amendment. You want to explore. Correct?
I'm not sure if that's the word I used, was it?
It's the word you used.
Okay, well,
Yep.
all right, then I guess that's the amendment.
Just for clarity, Mr. Chair, as I understand it, the amendment is, instead of amending the lease agreement, it's explore amending the lease agreement. Those are significantly different.
Correct. Okay, I don't see any further discussion. I'm going to call question on the amendment. All those opposed?
Opposed.
Baker, Moglove? Adams?
Opposed.
Evans opposed.
Evans?
Kerr opposed.
Kerr? I'm opposed. At 6 is defeated. Go back to the original motion and call question. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you, directors. Item number 9, local government and school district election agreements. Motion to see the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Thank you, Director Lee. Second.
Second.
Baker, thank you. And the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom can speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as we have done in previous election cycles, we've talked to the different local governments and school districts within our region to see about having agreements in place to coordinate and make best use, most efficient use of resources for the upcoming local government and school district elections. So this report brings the board up to date with some of the agreements that we have pretty much finalized with those entities. We still have a few more discussions, School District 84, Village of Zabalas, et cetera, and there may be further reports coming to the board, but we're recommending at this point these agreements be ratified by the board.
Thank you. On receipt, call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. And item B, the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute the proposed election agreements with School District 72, City of Camp River, and the Village of Gold River, Tassus, and Sayward.
Move the recommendation.
Director Lee, second. Director Baker. Any discussion? See none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 10, Local Government Climate Action Program. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Foley, seconder.
Second.
Baker, thank you, and the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a kind of a new program. It replaces an existing climate action program that the government has been providing funding for to local governments for many years. This new program provides a larger amount of money towards it. I think a bit broader scope of projects to apply that money to. $87,000 a year. The funds can be banked on a maximum 3-year term and put towards a number of projects that benefit the entire regional district, with the only stipulation that there are some matching funds from the regional district. However, those matching funds can come as in-kind, staff time. Having said that, the regional district is not short of any programs and funding that could help support this program. A number of projects that would benefit the entire regional district. So it's our hope that the board will support this and that we will participate in the latest program. And at budgeting time, if supported, we will include a number of projects and if necessary, supporting financial contributions to satisfy the needs of this program.
Thank you, CEO. Any discussion? Director Moglove.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just wanted to let everyone know that this was one of the other priorities that UBCM identified in discussions with the province, not just this particular program, but climate adaptation in general. And the ask from UBCM at our most recent meetings, I think it was in, I forget when it was, March, was this program, while it does increase the funding and it's more flexible, it's a 3-year time limit. And the concern of local governments is that if you're trying to have long-term planning, it's really hard if the funding is there for 3 years. So that the big ask was to make something that's much more long-term. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Thank you. Don't see any further questions. So on receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. And do you need a motion?
I'd move option B, that we apply for the grant.
Option B, thank you. Director Lee, seconder.
Evans, second.
Director Evans, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. Item 11, UBC meeting preparation. Premier and Ministers of Minister of Municipal Affairs. Motion to receive the report.
So moved.
Abram? Second?
I'll second.
Second.
Director Fowler, I believe it was. And the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I believe the board will remember, at the last meeting, we discussed options for the UBCM meetings with either and the Premier and or the Minister of Municipal Affairs. The board had some discussion and we consolidated on 3 items. There's some associated timelines with the topic items and submission to the province, and some short background on the topic for the province's review and further consideration if we're awarded those. So the 3 topics that the board settled on were interministerial cooperation for community-based projects, community resiliency planning, and North Island forestry and aquaculture concerns. So we went through the board minutes several times, extracted the discussion that the board members had, and as you can see in the report, we've put a small summary of what that discussion represents. What you see here in the board report is what we submitted to the province for approval. So these have gone forward for meetings with the Premier and the Minister of Municipal Affairs. There was a timeline again associated with that. We have submitted those and we will hear back at a later date. But in the meantime, we're now required to provide some background information on those subjects. As these are pretty new to staff, they're not part of our strategic plan. They haven't been on the list in previous years. The staff need to develop background informations for those meetings prior to even knowing if we're going to get the meetings accepted or not. So what it's my hope here today is that we can have some discussion on these items, and then staff can play back the minutes basically of this stuff and produce a backgrounder for the board's review.
Okay, thank you, CEO. On receipt, Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dave, you had done a very thorough report on based on everything that we've talked about in the past year. And it's kind of, I don't mean anything by this, but it's kind of unfortunate that that all went forward to the province, although I know you had a timeline, because it's a huge amount. And as you all know, we get 15 minutes, 5 minutes each topic, and they're going to look at each one that we sent, and you know, each one could be 15 minutes per topic. So it's going to look a little bit overwhelming. And my past experience, I've been to many of these meetings that have been supported by the regional district, by staff, with speaking notes sent to us. You have done it in the past. What it was she called, strategic communications coordinator or whatever, and your communications people have provided notes for the directors that were going to be going. Now that's what we're talking about in the second part, but by sending all of this in the first part, it's possibly going to kick us out of the list. It needs to be reduced back to just the items that we actually talked about, which you summarized very well in the topic numbers, topic number 1, 2, 3. And I think that is where we need to concentrate when we get to item B. So on item A, hopefully it doesn't do us any damage in the way of ministerial, pullback, because they are freaked out by the fact that they may have too much to talk about, or we may have too much to talk about. So anyway, we'll leave it at that for now, and I'll wait till item B comes.
Okay, any further discussion?
I just have a question.
Yeah, Director
So
Fuller?
it says that the examples are the Quadra housing and the connected coast. I was wondering if the transportation study would be also one of those sort of inter-regional items. Thanks.
Go to staff.
So just for clarity, Mr. Chair, so these are the items that we've submitted. This is what the board settled on. These are what we submitted, and these are the kind of compressed summaries that we extracted from the board's conversation. So this is what they're reviewing in consideration of the meeting. we have to be prepared for the meeting before we know if we're going to get the meeting. So in order to do that, we have to produce a backgrounder. So the backgrounder must be related and include the items that we have here and those things associated with that. So if we, talking about transportation, I'm not sure where that fits in. If the boards, and this is why we're having this discussion, because staff certainly cannot populate a backgrounder with the limited amount of information we've received. These are all new to us. So if, I'm going to make an assumption here, if community resiliency planning, if transportation is in that, great, let's have some conversation about that, and we'll play back the minutes and create some backgrounder. So just understand that these are the three topics. Let's have some conversation about what the board's feelings are in terms of these, and we'll try and produce something relative.
Okay, so what I would suggest then, let's go through one at a time. Item number 1. Sorry, Tom, there we go. That the first one is interministerial cooperation of community-based projects. What discussion do we want to have? Oh, sorry, we're still on receipt. So let's call question on receipt first. Anyone opposed to receipt? See none, carried. So let's talk about item number 1.
Mr.
Director
Chair?
Abram.
Yes, thank you.
Just think it, I'm not trying to be, slow people down of discussion, but, we got a few things here, so let's try and keep our discussions to the point.
Okay, and I think that the only thing that I wanted to say about this was the only thing that we really talked about this, including this particular item, was concerning the lack of interministerial cooperation with local government in the densification and affordable housing issue. That's what it was all about, and that was directly to the Minister of Municipal Affairs. So, it's been expanded way beyond that. And if we shrink it back down to talk about that one item, which covers a lot of communities, I believe that the minister would then be able to say, okay, and staff would be able to say, okay, here's what the speaking notes look like for that. We can talk about VHA, we can talk about the central housing, whatever they're called. All those different things can be worked into those one pager that we've received in the past. It's just a one pager with, say, 6 or 8 bullet points that say, this is what we have come up with as an SRD. Here you go, Minister. Please deal with them. And then we move on to the next topic. So I think, if you look back, Dave, through the files, you will find, I've got copies of them if you want them, all the speaking notes from previous years that have come from staff in conjunction with the director, being me, on the issues that I brought forward. And I brought this one forward about the densification of Q Cove, the LAP, the lack of cooperation, VHA, et cetera. I'm done.
Okay. So I think that's the key. It just that the SRD encourages, discussion, reviewing, and collaboration. That's what we're asking.
Yeah, if I can, Mr. Chair, I'm just hoping to inspire some discussion and some greater detail as Director Abram has given us, and then we'll produce it from that and bring it back to you and say, did we catch the intention of what the board was? So it was just open discussion, a little more in the weeds about these topics, and again, just trying to inspire some words that we can use to populate a backgrounder. So no resolution, just discussion. And if there's others that want to talk further on this, great. If not, we can move to the next one and just kind of talk about what we believe is the focus of community resiliency planning.
Okay, anything else on item 1, directors? Topic 1, sorry. Seeing none. Topic 2, community resilience. Director Baker.
I would like to see, in light of climate change and the heat domes and the heat issues that we're having, I'd like to see us go after monies to retrofit some of our buildings for air conditioning and have cooling centers. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
So, just, again, there's no wrong answers here. We're just looking to see what, consensus of the board is on these topics.
Any further discussion on topic 2?
I think that,
Director Fowler.
thank you. My community resilience planning does definitely touch on what Director Baker was saying about heat domes and heat pumps and cooling centers and having that kind of pre-planning to deal with the eventual heat. But I think too, community resilience is part of food security, transportation. I know earlier in the agenda, we were talking a lot about bike paths or multi-use things, and those are also sort of ways that increase a community's resiliency and strength. And also I see emergency preparedness comes into this as you were talking about cooling centers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? See no hands, we'll go to topic 3, North Island Forestry and Agriculture Industry Concerns. Any discussion? Yes. Director Baker.
One of the difficulties is with the shutdown of the Discovery Islands and not reissuing the licensing, there is a Moe farm close to Sayward that was lumped into that category. So having that farm being taken away is going to actually financially hurt Sayward because they pay money to Sayward Futures, which maintains our wharf. So that is a concern of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Moglove.
Yeah, thanks. The other aspect of this issue, I believe, is that if the province is going down this path, on the old growth moratorium and or the agriculture shutting down of some of the farms, then community transition, economic transition needs to be front and center. They talk a lot about economic supports, but from my understanding is what communities are looking for is not money necessarily, but how do we keep our people, our residents in the community with alternate types of work, other industry, you can't, otherwise the communities are going to just depopulate, so to speak. So I think that's the aspect. I think it's more than just providing, some short-term funding. It is to transition to possible other industry.
Thank you. And I got Director Abram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I speaking?
You're speaking now on topic 3.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, couldn't see if my mic was on. Yeah, and with the recent announcement from Joyce Murray, a minister, a federal minister, regarding it was regarding all of the fish farms, but specifically to the Discovery Islands. There was a heavy reliance on the fact that proper consultation, will be mainly what she's going to be concentrating on from now until January of 2023, I think it was. So I think, all of the concerns of any community can be brought forward at that time. And she's heard loud and clear from local governments that they weren't consulted and they want to be consulted. So that's, I think, it's already there. And I don't think we need to be, I don't think lobbying our provincial minister of municipal affairs is really, going to be as productive as lobbying the federal minister. So anyway, just leave it at that. It's definitely something that has to happen. There has to be a transition plan. And that was in the announcement that there will be a transition plan. So that was in the last minister's announcement also, that there would be a transition plan, but then she moved on to something else. I don't know what, but anyway.
Okay, thank you. And Director Baker.
I agree with Director Mulgrove in the fact that it can't just be money thrown at the situation. I mean, we have to have a program in place that's going to replace those jobs and consistently bring revenue to the community year after year after year, not just waiting for a government handout. And as far as, with all due respect to Director Abram, I disagree. You need to also lobby your provincial ministers to get them on board, because the more people on board from a local to provincial and then to the federal level, I think adds more weight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I think, looking at staff.
We will do our best, and at the next board meeting, I think we'll bring back a draft. There may be an opportunity, depending on how creative Elaine and Renee are, that maybe we'll circulate something amongst the directors beforehand to see how close we are.
Excellent. So then we have item B, that a background reports be prepared based on the topics summaries attached to the June 24th today, 2022 report from the CEO. I need that as a motion, please. Moglove, seconder.
Second.
Baker, thank you. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 12. Director, oh, sorry. Item 12, request for.
So Brad, before termination or closed session.
Yeah.
So Tom astutely pointed out that I think mistakenly we voted against that climate action grant. I think everyone's understanding was we were the one to support it.
We voted against it.
Yeah, we voted against it. I think that was a
Well, you
mistake.
supported option B instead of option A.
Oh,
That was Edie found that.
So before termination, let's just bring that back to the board members and
clarify.
yeah, have a motion instead of this. I don't think anyone's intention was to not apply for it. What happened there?
Are we back?
No.
Guess I'll go do a security check.
Should we do a security check?
I hear there's
Protesters.
really?
Yes.
Oh, you're going off the minutes.
So
Okay.
we should actually investigate that.
I can hear Elaine
So we don't have a quorum.
pulling her hair out right now.
I'll take direction from the chair. I'll take direction from my boss.
So do we have a 5-minute recess?
Yeah.
I think you're good for 5 minutes. It looks like, yeah. It'll take Brenda and Jim.
I'll escort Director Baker to
I don't think there's
Lee?
I'm concerned about Director Abrams.
So some of us are here and some of us are maybe there. I don't know.
Jim, can you hear?
Yeah, I think everybody that was kicked out is just trying to rejoin. So something just happened during the transition.
So
Jim, can you hear me?
we can hear you now, Brad.
Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
you wanna,
We're just waiting to join. Let's take a quick 5 minutes here, guys. We're still having problems with technical here in the office.
Okay.
and that wraps up everything for Area C, Mr. Chair, so, thank you.
No.
Okay,
No, tell me you didn't go through it.
Pass the budget, financial plan, strategic initiatives for C, in lightning speed.
All right, well, good.
okay. So we'll be back in a sec, guys. Just till we get lit up.
Are we going in camera now?
No. No, we're not, Brenda. We're still got technical problems in the office here. So we haven't
Yeah,
finished. We haven't finished off the regular meeting yet. So just hang tough.
Okay, My screen was frozen, so I just got back on.
Yep, just hang tough. I'll come back and
Okay.
restart the meeting shortly.
What item did you leave off on, Brad? I was off air for a while.
We're going to item 12.
Okay, perfect.
Item 12, you mean item 2?
Item 12. Request for financial assistance Hayward Futures is the next
Right.
item.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, okay, I skipped a couple.
Okay, I think we'll be ready in about 1 minute, guys. Okay, directors. We're back in order. Item number 12, request for financial assistance, Hayward Future Society. Motion to receive the
Move
report.
receipt.
Thank you, Director Wally. Second by Director
Second.
Baker. Go to staff.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
On receipt, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. And item B,
Move B, that the board approve a grant to the Sayward Future Society in the amount of $500 to assist with prizes for the Sayward 2022 Canada Day celebrations to be paid from Electoral grant and aid budget.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Director Lee. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Bylaws, first bylaw, 342, Strathcona Guards loan. Motion to receive the report from the CEO.
Move receipt.
Adams and I think it was Lee. CEO, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
Nothing to add. No discussion. Call question on receipt. Anyone opposed? See none carried. Motion
I'll move
third-
that third reading be rescinded.
Director
Second,
Adams
Evans.
and Evans. Any discussion? Director Adams,
No, it's fine.
you're fine? Okay, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? See none carried. Item C,
Move the amendment.
move the amendment by Director Adams, second by
Evans.
Director
second.
Evans. And Director Abram, you have a question?
I just have a question, is that when Director Adams comes online, there's very loud
Yeah,
water
yeah.
running or something?
It's,
Is that coming from you, Andy?
he lives by the ocean.
Like,
Yeah, it comes
you
from
got some
Andy.
sort of Zen fountain there or something?
Yeah. Okay,
Because I can't hear you at all when you talk.
okay, so we moved item C, second by Director Evans. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none carried. Item D, bylaw
Move
342.
D, Evans.
Evans. Director Mogul seconded it, and Director Adams has got his hand up waving. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And E, the bylaw 342 be third reading as amended. Director Adams, second by
Evans.
Director Evans. Any further discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Bylaw 246, bylaw number 2 is bylaw 461, electrical city or service. Motion to receive report from the CEO.
Motion to receive, Abram.
Thank you.
Second.
Wally and CEO.
Nothing to add, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. On receipt, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seen none carried. Item
Move item
B,
Abram.
Abram
Second.
and Wally. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item C,
Move item C, Abram.
Second.
Wally. Thank you. Any discussion? Question? Anyone opposed? Carried.
Move
Item
item
D,
D.
Second.
Abram and Wally. Any discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Correspondence, we have 3 items.
Pull one.
Okay,
Move 2 and 3.
Second,
move 2 and 3, second Wally and Lee. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 1, Coastal Regional District meeting request. Motion receive.
Okay,
Abram,
Motion.
second by
Lee.
Lee. And Director Abram.
okay, so this is a product of the Coastal Community Network over the past, well, couple of years, but mostly over this past year. It's basically about the livelihoods of all of the coastal communities, wild fishery, and all of the processing plants, et cetera, all of the regulation that is changing rapidly about offshore fishing, et cetera, et cetera. So as your rep on the CCN, I'd like the SRD to agree to have representation at this meeting, and would ask that since I'm familiar with the topics and I've been working with this same group every time they have a call, I'd like to have the opportunity to be part of it. So if we could,
Okay, after receipt. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried. And do we have subsequent motion?
everything I just said.
So you want to move the Director Abram,
First, I'd like to just move that we support the request for the meeting, that we be part of it, and that I be appointed or allowed to attend as your representative, as your current representative.
Second.
okay, moved by Abram, second by Wally. Any discussion? Seeing none, call questions. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, carried.
Could I also ask that a short note go from the chair to the people that wrote the letter to let them know that we are in favor of doing this, and we've passed a motion to do so?
Definitely. Okay, yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Members report, Northern Vancouver Island Fisheries Economy Workshop. Motion to receive the report.
Motion to receive, Abram.
Seconder,
Second,
thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. No management report, new business, Area D Planning Commission. Director Lee.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sad to report that I've lost 2 of my advisory commission members, Patricia Boehm and John Aykroyd. Patricia has advised that she's moving out of the country in July, and John Aykroyd, who's chaired the APC for many years, he's just, I think he sent a very cryptic note saying that he's had it, he's tired. He's been the chair for many years, and I think he's just feeling it. And so just to advise that I'm the board that we have lost 2 of the APC members, and I would like a motion for the board to send both John Aykroyd and Patricia Boehm letters of thanks for their many years of service to the regional district on the Area D Advisory Planning Commission.
Second by Director Abram. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call question. Anyone opposed? Carried. No amendment closed. So before
Move
we,
that
just a
as-
sec, please.
Mhm.
Go before now. Okay. So right now, I'd like to reconsider, and I'd like to, as the chair, want to reconsider item number 10. I believe we voted it down and rather in favor of. This is the Climate Action Program grant opportunity. And I want to go to Mr. Yates to clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm just going to pull up the report quickly. And as we see in the report, there were two options presented. Option A was to submit an application. Option B was to decline to submit. And the motion that was passed and moved by Director Lee and passed by the board was option B, to not submit an application at this time. And we just wish to confirm that that is indeed the wish of the board.
Mr. Chair, I was mistaken on that. I meant option A, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for picking that up.
Great, thank you. That's what we thought. Okay, so at this time, then I would take a motion from Director Lee
Move
for
option
A.
Move option A.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
Second.
Second, Evans.
Okay, I've got Director Evans as seconder. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. Then we're on the close. The report from CEO be received.
Move the receipt of the CAO's report
Thank you.
on the closed session.
Director Lee, second by
Second.
Director Fowler. Any discussion? Call questions. Anyone opposed? Carried. And that the closed meeting be held immediately following termination for all the numbers and letters attached.
So moved.
Director Lee, second by Director Moglove. Anyone opposed? Carried. Motion terminate.
Terminate.
Director Fowler and Director Wally, thank you. Anyone opposed? Carried. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
And we're